The atmosphere in the grand press conference hall was electric. Photographers adjusted their lenses, journalists whispered to one another, and fans who had been lucky enough to secure a seat were buzzing with anticipation. Cristiano Ronaldo, the footballing legend, sat at the head of the room, answering questions from reporters with his usual charm and composure. His presence commanded respect, his aura radiating the confidence of a man who had conquered stadiums, lifted trophies, and etched his name into the history of football. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. For years, he had been the center of attention, handling questions about his career, rivalries, and ambitions. But today, something different was about to happen, something that no one in the room expected. As the Quanda session continued, a small voice cut through the noise. It was innocent, yet powerful enough to silence the room. A little boy, no older than 7, stepped forward. His tiny hands gripped the microphone with a mixture of nervousness and determination. His eyes, large and full of wonder, locked onto Ronaldo's. And in a voice trembling with sincerity, he asked a question that no one saw coming. Cristiano, do you believe in God? A hushed silence fell over the crowd. The question lingered in the air, weighty and profound. Journalists who had been typing away on their laptops stopped mid-sentence. The cameras, which had been snapping away, froze as if the entire world was waiting for his answer. Ronaldo, who had faced some of the toughest defenders in football history, suddenly found himself in unfamiliar territory. The young boy's question was not about his skill, his trophies, or his accolades. It was about something deeper, something that spoke to the heart rather than the mind. For a moment, he didn't respond. He looked at the child, his face softening, his lips pressing together as if weighing his words carefully. Then he took a deep breath and leaned forward. "That is a beautiful question," he said gently, his voice warm. He paused, glancing at the child's hopeful expression before continuing. "You see, when I was a little boy, just like you, I had many dreams. I wanted to be the best. I wanted to play football for the biggest clubs in the world, but more than anything, I wanted to make my mother proud." The room remained silent, everyone hanging on to his every word. "When I was young, life was not easy. My family didn't have much. There were times we struggled, times when I saw my mother working so hard just to make sure we had food on the table. I was just a child. But even then, I knew the sacrifices she made, and in those moments when things were tough, I would look up at the sky and talk to God." The little boy's eyes widened, his small fingers gripping the microphone tighter. "I didn't know if he was listening," Ronaldo admitted with a soft chuckle. "But I would pray, not for money, not for fame, just for the strength to keep going, to be strong enough to help my family. And somehow life gave me that strength. Whether it was God answering me or simply my own determination, I don't know. But I do know this." He looked the boy directly in the eye. "Every goal I have scored, every match I have won, every time I lifted a trophy, I always remembered to be grateful. I have seen miracles in my life, things that I cannot explain. Maybe that is God. Maybe He is there in the moments when we feel alone, when we feel like giving up, whispering, 'Keep going.'" A soft sniffle broke the silence. Someone in the audience was crying. Then another, and another. Even the journalists, hardened by years of covering stories, found themselves wiping away tears. "But more than anything," Ronaldo continued, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "I have learned that believing is not just about words. It is about actions. You can pray all you want, but if you do not work hard, if you do not give your best, if you do not show kindness to others, then what is your belief worth?" The boy stared at him, absorbing every word. "So yes," Ronaldo said finally, his voice gentle, I believe. I believe in something greater than myself. I believe that kindness, love, and hard work are all parts of something divine. And I believe that if you have a dream, if you work hard, and if you never stop believing in yourself, miracles can happen." Tears now streamed freely down faces in the audience. The little boy, overwhelmed with emotion, dropped the microphone and ran toward Ronaldo. Without hesitation, the football star opened his arms and embraced him. The room erupted in applause, thunderous, uncontainable, and filled with admiration not just for the athlete, but for the human being sitting before them. That day, Cristiano Ronaldo didn't just inspire with his goals or his trophies. He inspired with his heart, and for everyone present in that room, they would never forget the moment when a little boy's innocent question led to an answer that touched their very souls. As the thunderous applause filled the room, Cristiano Ronaldo held the little boy in his embrace for a few moments longer. There was something profound in that moment, something that transcended football, fame, or fortune. It was a moment of pure human connection, a moment where a child's innocent curiosity met the wisdom of a man who had seen the world at its brightest and darkest. As Ronaldo slowly let go, he looked down at the boy and smiled, wiping away a stray tear from his own eye. The boy sniffled, trying to hold back his emotions, but his tiny frame trembled with the weight of the words he had just heard. "What's your name, little man?" Ronaldo asked softly. The boy hesitated for a moment, overwhelmed by the attention, before whispering, "Matteo." Ronaldo grinned. "Matteo. That's a strong name." He ruffled the boy's hair playfully before turning back to the audience, who were still silent, still captivated. You see, sometimes the most important questions don't come from the experts, the journalists, or the analysts. They come from a child, because a child asks not to impress, not to debate, but to understand. There was an undeniable truth in his words. The world had seen Ronaldo answer countless questions over the years, questions about his skills, his achievements, his rivals. But this moment was different. There were no statistics, no tactical breakdowns, no career comparisons, just a man speaking from his heart. The moderator, who had been rendered speechless by the entire exchange, finally found his voice. Clearing his throat, he gestured toward the audience. "Perhaps we should continue with the questions." But as he spoke, something unexpected happened. A man in the audience stood up. He was older, his hair streaked with silver, his hands trembling slightly as he clutched the microphone. His voice was thick with emotion as he spoke. I don't have a question," he admitted, his voice shaking. "But I just wanted to say thank you." Ronaldo looked at the man with curiosity. "For what?" he asked gently. The man took a deep breath. "For reminding me of something I had forgotten," he said. "I lost my wife last year. She was my everything. And when she passed, I stopped believing in anything. I was angry, at life, at God, at the universe. I felt like there was no reason to keep going." A hush fell over the room again. Even the cameras, which had been flashing continuously, slowed as the man continued. "But when you spoke just now, about believing, about pushing forward, about finding strength even when it feels like there's none left, I felt something I haven't felt in a long time." His voice cracked. "Hope!" Ronaldo's face softened, his usual confident expression replaced by something more vulnerable. He nodded, stepping away from the table and walking toward the man. Without hesitation, he reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said sincerely. "I can't imagine the pain you've been through. But I do know this. Your wife wouldn't want you to stop believing. She wouldn't want you to give up. She'd want you to live, to love, to keep going." The man let out a shaky breath, nodding, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Thank you," he whispered. As Ronaldo returned to his seat, the room remained in an emotional trance. What had started as a simple Quanda session had transformed into something else entirely, something raw, something real. It was no longer just about football, it was about life itself. A young woman raised her hand next. Her voice was barely above a whisper when she spoke. "I was diagnosed with cancer 2 years ago," she said, "and through all the chemo, all the pain, there were days I wanted to give up. But watching you play, watching your dedication, your discipline, your perseverance, it gave me strength. It made me believe that if you could fight, so could I." Ronaldo blinked, clearly taken aback by the honesty of her words. "You are the real fighter," he said softly. "Football is just a game. What you've faced, that takes real courage." She nodded, biting her lip to keep her emotions in check. "I just wanted you to know you make a difference, not just in football, in people's lives." For a brief moment, Ronaldo was silent. The weight of the moment settled heavily on his shoulders. He had always known he had millions of fans, people who admired his skill, his talent, his work ethic. But this was different. This was deeper. "Sometimes," he admitted, his voice softer than before, "I forget that. I get caught up in the training, the matches, the expectations. I forget that beyond the stadiums, beyond the trophies, There are people like you who find inspiration in what I do, and that means more to me than any Ballon d'Or." The room exhaled collectively, as if they had all been holding their breath. Then, just as the emotions threatened to overwhelm the entire hall, Ronaldo did something unexpected. He laughed. A warm, genuine laugh. "You know," he said, glancing at Matteo, the little boy who had started it all, "when I was your age, I never thought I'd be sitting here talking about God, about life, about hope." He shook his head with a small grin. "I just wanted to kick a ball." A ripple of laughter spread through the crowd, a much-needed release of tension. "But maybe," Ronaldo continued, his tone turning thoughtful, "maybe football was never just about kicking a ball. Maybe it was always about something more." The audience nodded, some dabbing at their eyes, others simply absorbing the gravity of the moment. As the session wrapped up, Ronaldo stood, glancing one last time at the little boy who had unknowingly shifted the course of the evening. "Matteo!" he called out, making the child's eyes widen with excitement. "Promise me something!" The boy nodded eagerly. "Whatever you choose to do in life," Ronaldo said, crouching down to look him in the eyes, "do it with your whole heart. Whether it's football, painting, writing, or anything else, do it with passion, with belief, and with kindness." Matteo nodded again, his tiny hands clenched into fists. "I promise." Ronaldo grinned. "Good. And who knows, maybe one day I'll see you on the pitch." The boy's eyes widened, his face breaking into the brightest smile. As Ronaldo turned to leave, the audience erupted into applause, longer, louder, and filled with more admiration than ever before. This was more than just a press conference. This was a reminder that greatness is not just about skill, it is about heart. And on that unforgettable day, in a room full of people from all walks of life, Cristiano Ronaldo reminded them all what truly mattered. As the applause echoed throughout the grand conference hall, Ronaldo took a step back, absorbing the moment. His heart pounded, not from nerves, not from the weight of expectation, but from the raw, unfiltered humanity that had unfolded before him. He had come here expecting a standard quanda, a typical media engagement where he'd discuss his training, his fitness, and the future of his career. But life, unpredictable as it is, had given him something different, something deeper. The little boy, Matteo, still stood there, looking up at him with bright, hopeful eyes. His question had been simple, yet it had opened a floodgate of emotions not just for Ronaldo, but for everyone in the room. People had spoken about loss, faith, pain, and perseverance, things far more important than any trophy or championship. For a man who had spent his life perfecting his craft, pushing his body to its limits, and chasing the dream of footballing immortality, this moment had reminded him of something fundamental, the impact of belief. Ronaldo turned toward the moderator, who was still struggling to regain control of the event. The journalist cleared his throat and looked down at his notepad, clearly unsure of how to transition back to the usual sports questions after such an emotional exchange. But before he could speak, a voice from the back of the room broke through the noise. "If you could go back in time and speak to yourself as a young boy, before the fame, before the success, what would you say?" It was an unexpected question, and Ronaldo took a moment to consider it. He glanced around the room, his mind flashing back to his childhood in Madeira, where he had played barefoot on the streets, kicking a ball against the walls of his small home. He remembered the nights his mother went without food so he and his siblings could eat. He remembered the pain of leaving his family behind at the age of 12 to train in Lisbon, the tears he had cried into his pillow at night, longing for home. "I would tell him," Ronaldo began, his voice quieter now, more reflective, "to keep going." He exhaled slowly, gathering his thoughts. "There were so many times when I doubted myself, when I felt too small, too weak, too far from home, when I thought about giving up. But I would tell that boy, the boy playing on the streets, the boy with holes in his shoes, the boy who had nothing but a dream, to never stop believing, because one day, all that struggle, all that sacrifice would mean something." The room hung on his every word. He wasn't just speaking to the audience. He was speaking to every person who had ever doubted themselves, who had ever felt lost or uncertain. "And I would tell him," he continued, a small smile forming on his lips, "to cherish his family, to hug his mother a little tighter, to laugh with his siblings a little longer. Because in the end, no matter how many trophies you win, no matter how much money you make, family is everything. A few journalists wiped their eyes discreetly, overwhelmed by the sincerity in his voice. Then, from the side of the room, another hand shot up. It belonged to a teenage girl, her long dark hair tucked behind her ears. Her voice was steady but filled with emotion. "Do you ever feel lonely?" she asked. It was a surprising question, one that no one had expected. After all, Ronaldo was one of the most famous people on the planet. He was adored by millions, celebrated wherever he went, showered with praise and admiration. But the truth, as he had learned, was far more complicated. Ronaldo let out a small sigh, nodding slowly. "Yes," he admitted, "there have been moments in my life when I have felt very, very alone." The honesty of his answer stunned the room. When you reach a certain level of success, people see the trophies, the cars, the houses. They see the celebrations, the goals, the awards. But they don't see the nights when you're sitting alone in a hotel room, away from your family, away from the people who truly know you. They don't see the pressure, the expectation to always be perfect, to always win, to never show weakness. The teenager swallowed hard, visibly moved. "But I've learned that loneliness is not about how many people are around you. It's about who truly understands you," Ronaldo continued. "And in those moments of loneliness, I remind myself of why I started. I think about my mother, my children, my friends who knew me before I was Cristiano Ronaldo. And that helps." A slow nod of understanding spread across the room. It was a side of him they had never seen before, a side stripped of glamour and success, revealing the man behind the legend. As more hands went up, Ronaldo realized something. This was no longer a press conference. It was a conversation. An open, honest, human exchange that had nothing to do with football and everything to do with life. An older woman stood up next. She had lines on her face, the kind that spoke of years filled with love and hardship. Her voice was gentle but steady. "Do you ever wonder what your purpose is beyond football?" she asked. Ronaldo smiled at the question. "All the time," he admitted. "Football has given me everything. It has been my passion, my career, my identity for as long as I can remember. But I know that one day I will no longer be able to play at the highest level. And when that day comes, I don't want to feel empty. I don't want to wonder who I am without the game." He leaned forward, his fingers interlocked on the table. "That's why I try to give back. Through my foundation, through helping children, through making sure my family is taken care of. Because in the end, football is temporary. But kindness, love, and the way you impact others, that lasts forever." The woman nodded, her face filled with admiration. More questions followed, about resilience, about failure, about the moments that had shaped him. And with every answer, Ronaldo gave more of himself, peeling back the layers of the global icon to reveal the man underneath. And then, just as the session neared its end, Matteo, the little boy who had started it all, spoke again. "Cristiano?" he asked softly. Ronaldo turned to him, smiling. "Yes, little man?" Matteo hesitated before asking, "Do you think God is proud of you?" The question took Ronaldo by surprise. He had spent his life working tirelessly to be the best, on the pitch, in the gym, in every aspect of his profession. He had sought the approval of fans, teammates, coaches, and the world. But had he ever stopped to ask himself if God would be proud? A silence fell over the room. Everyone waited for his answer. Ronaldo took a deep breath. "I hope so," he said, his voice sincere. "I hope that in the way I treat people, in the way I push myself to be better, in the way I try to give back, I hope that counts for something." He smiled down at the little boy. "And I hope he's proud of you too, Matteo." The boy beamed, his heart full. With that, the session came to a close. But as Ronaldo stood, shaking hands and offering smiles, he knew that something had changed. This wasn't just another media event. This was a reminder. A reminder of what truly mattered, of the things that went beyond the game, beyond the fame. And as he walked out of the room, surrounded by people who had come in as strangers but left as something more, he felt something deep in his heart. Not just pride, not just gratitude, but peace. As Ronaldo stepped out of the conference hall, the cool evening air brushed against his skin. He inhaled deeply, his mind still processing the emotions of the past hour. He had expected a routine press event, but it had turned into something far more meaningful, an experience that had moved him in a way he hadn't anticipated. The world saw him as a footballer, but today he had been reminded that he was also a son, a father, and above all, a human being navigating the same complexities of life as everyone else. He walked toward the waiting car, but just before he could step inside, he felt a small tug on his sleeve. Turning around, he saw Matteo standing there, his little face filled with excitement and something else, determination. "Cristiano," the boy said, his voice small but firm, "I just wanted to say, you made me feel like I matter." Ronaldo knelt down so that they were eye level. "Matteo," he said warmly, "you do matter, more than you know." The boy hesitated, then whispered, "I think maybe God sent me to ask you that question today." Ronaldo was taken aback. The innocence, the sincerity of the statement, it struck something deep within him. He smiled and placed a gentle hand on Matteo's shoulder. "Maybe he did," he murmured. "Maybe he knew I needed to hear it." The boy grinned, and before Ronaldo could say another word, Matteo wrapped his arms around him in a tight hug. Ronaldo, touched beyond words, hugged him back. As the boy finally stepped away and ran toward his waiting parents, Ronaldo watched him go, feeling a sense of fulfillment he hadn't expected. He had played in front of millions, scored goals in the world's biggest stadiums, lifted countless trophies. But in that moment, he felt that nothing had ever meant quite as much as the look in that little boy's eyes. When he finally slid into the back seat of his car, his mind was still buzzing. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through the messages. His family, friends, and teammates had already seen clips from the press conference. Messages of admiration and support flooded his inbox, but one in particular stood out. It was from his mother. "Moi filho, today you reminded the world that your heart is bigger than football. I am so proud of you. This is what truly matters." Ronaldo smiled, a lump forming in his throat. His mother had always been his rock, the person who had sacrificed everything to give him a chance at success. And now, as he read her words, he realized that the value she had instilled in him as a child had never left him. He put his phone away and leaned back against the seat, staring out of the window as the car pulled away. The streets of the city passed by in a blur, but his thoughts remained anchored to the night's events. He thought about the people in that room, the journalist who had spoken about his grief, the young woman who had battled cancer, the teenager who had asked about loneliness. These were real people, with real struggles. And somehow, through the simplest of conversations, he had connected with them. Fame had always been a double-edged sword for Ronaldo. It had given him opportunities beyond his wildest dreams, but had also placed a weight on his shoulders that few could understand. The pressure to always be at his best, the constant scrutiny, the endless comparisons. It was exhausting. But moments like this reminded him of why it was all worth it. If his journey, his struggles, and his triumphs could inspire even one person, then he had done something right. He found himself thinking about his own children. He had always wanted them to grow up knowing that success wasn't just about wealth or fame. It was about character, kindness, and the way you treat others. He wanted them to know that their worth wasn't measured by trophies or accolades, but by the impact they had on the people around them. As the car continued through the city, Ronaldo's thoughts drifted back to his younger self. He could almost see that little boy from Madeira, the one who had trained tirelessly on the streets, who had cried when he left home, who had dreamed so big that others had laughed at him. If he could speak to that boy now, what else would he say? Perhaps he would tell him that the road would be harder than he ever imagined, that there would be nights filled with doubt and exhaustion, that success would come with a price, that the world would both love and criticize him in equal measure. But more than anything, he would tell him to hold on to his belief, to never lose sight of who he was beneath all the glory. Ronaldo exhaled, running a hand through his hair. He had spent years pushing himself beyond his limits, proving his worth on the field, breaking records. And yet, today had reminded him that sometimes the most powerful moments come not from victory, but from vulnerability. As the car approached his home, he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Gratitude for his family, for his journey, for the people who had believed in him when he was just a boy with a dream. And gratitude for moments like tonight, moments that stripped away the noise and left only what was real. He stepped out of the car and walked toward his house. The night was quiet, the stars shining above like distant reminders of something greater than himself. He took a deep breath, feeling an unusual sense of peace. Maybe, just maybe, Matteo had been right. Maybe there had been something divine about tonight. Maybe in the midst of all the pressure, the expectations, the relentless pursuit of greatness, God had simply wanted to remind him of what truly mattered. Ronaldo entered his home, the grand yet welcoming space illuminated softly by the dim glow of strategically placed lights. His house was a reflection of his journey, elegant yet not ostentatious, filled with reminders of his success but also of his humble beginnings. His mother's favorite photograph from Madeira was placed on the main table, right beside one of his trophies, a quiet yet powerful symbol of where he came from and where he had reached. As he walked toward the living room, he heard the soft murmur of a television. He smiled as he saw his eldest son, Cristiano Jr., curled up on the couch watching highlights from an old Champions League match. "You're still up?" Ronaldo asked, his voice gentle. Cristiano Jr. looked up, grinning. "I wanted to wait for you," he admitted. "I saw the press conference." Ronaldo sat beside him, feeling his son's eager eyes studying him, searching for answers even before he could ask the questions. "You know," Cristiano Jr. continued, his voice thoughtful, "I've always seen you as the strongest person in the world. But today, you showed a different kind of strength." Ronaldo tilted his head. "What do you mean?" "You always tell me that strength is about training hard, never giving up, always pushing past limits. But today, when you spoke to that little boy, when you talked about believing in something bigger than yourself, that was different. It was like, you weren't just my hero. You became everyone's hero in a different way." Ronaldo felt a lump in his throat. His son's words hit deeper than he expected. "Strength comes in many forms," he said after a pause. "When I was your age, I thought strength was just about being the best, running the fastest, kicking the hardest, scoring the most goals. But as I grew older, I realized strength is also about knowing when to open your heart, when to listen, when to lift others up." Cristiano Jr. nodded slowly. "I think I understand," he said. "It's not just about winning, it's about making a difference." Ronaldo smiled. "Exactly." They sat in silence for a while, watching the screen as old clips of Ronaldo's most iconic goals played. "Do you ever get scared?" Cristiano Jr. asked suddenly. The question took Ronaldo by surprise. "Of what?" "Of what comes next, of life after football, of not being the best anymore." Ronaldo sighed, rubbing his hands together thoughtfully. It was a question he had asked himself many times, especially in recent years as his career edged toward its final chapters. "Yes," he admitted honestly, "there was a time when I was terrified of it. Football has been my whole life. I built everything around it. The idea of waking up one day and not having a match to train for, not having the stadium roar my name, it used to scare me." Cristiano Jr. watched him carefully. "And now?" "Now!" Ronaldo exhaled, choosing his words carefully. "Now I understand that life is bigger than football. It always was. Football gave me a purpose, a platform, a dream. But my legacy isn't just about goals or trophies. It's about how I use what I've been given to inspire, to teach, to help others find their own paths." Cristiano Jr. smiled. "So even when you stop playing, you'll still be the greatest?" Ronaldo chuckled, ruffling his son's hair. "Being the greatest isn't about what others say. It's about knowing in your heart that you've done everything you could to be the best version of yourself." Cristiano Jr. thought for a moment before nodding. "I want to be like that too." Ronaldo's chest swelled with pride. "You will be," he said firmly, "because you already have the most important thing, a heart that wants to learn." At that moment, the door creaked slightly, and Ronaldo's mother appeared in the doorway, her presence always a comforting force. "I see my two boys are having deep conversations," she said with a warm smile. Ronaldo laughed. "Just sharing some wisdom." His mother walked over, taking a seat beside them. "You know," she said, "I watched that press conference too, and I have to say, Cristiano, tonight you reminded me of your father." Ronaldo looked at her, surprised. His father, who had passed away before he could see his son's greatest triumphs, was a figure of both pain and inspiration for him. He had struggled with addiction, but he had also been a man of deep kindness, a man who had believed in Ronaldo even when the world hadn't yet recognized his talent. "How so?" Ronaldo asked. His mother smiled, placing a hand over his. Your father was not a man of many words, but when he spoke from the heart. He wasn't perfect, but he believed in goodness. And tonight, when you spoke about belief, about strength, about something greater than yourself, I saw a piece of him in you. Ronaldo swallowed hard, the weight of her words sinking in. He had spent his whole life striving to be the best, to make his family proud, to prove himself to the world. But tonight had been different. Tonight had been about something deeper, something beyond just him. His mother patted his hand gently. You have already given the world so much, my filho. But the greatest gift you can give is to keep inspiring, not just through football, but through who you are. Ronaldo nodded, feeling a sense of calm settle over him. He had spent years chasing greatness, but tonight he realized that true greatness wasn't just in victories. It was in the lives he touched, in the moments of kindness, in the lessons he passed on. He turned to Cristiano Jr. Go get some sleep, son. We've got training in the morning. Cristiano Jr. groaned playfully but obeyed, giving both his father and grandmother a hug before heading upstairs. As Ronaldo sat with his mother, he looked out the window at the night sky. The stars shone brightly, steady and unwavering, and for the first time in a long while he felt completely at peace. Maybe, he thought, life wasn't about running toward the next goal, the next record, the next victory. Maybe it was about embracing the journey, about the people you meet along the way, about the moments that remind you of what truly matters. And with that thought, he knew one thing for certain. No matter where life took him next, no matter what challenges lay ahead, he would always believe. And that belief, more than any trophy, any accolade, any statistic, would be his greatest legacy. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on a little boy asking Cristiano Ronaldo about God? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.